Hello, this is Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher, which is a podcast where a comedian talks to his yoga teacher and vice versa, because she talks back. Anyway, thanks for finding this, stumbling across it, or being a repeated listener. Let's just get straight to the show, shall we? Here it is. So one thing I was thinking, right, you know birds?
I do know of birds, yes, that fly in the sky.
Yeah, I know you're an aficionado of nature, so you can identify large species of animals, if not individuals. So birds are actually descended from dinosaurs, aren't they?
Right.
You knew that?
I knew that, I'm pretty sure that rings a bell, yeah.
So I thought that if a bird actually met a dinosaur, that's a real generational divide there, isn't it, between birds and dinosaurs? Do you think the dinosaurs are kind of like... need to toughen up birds, and they see the birds as being like sort of wokey snowflakes, sort of like what are all these coloured feathers about, you know? But the birds will see like the dinosaurs as being these like Neanderthal sort of gammons that like just believe in brute strength, or like harking back to the old days when they used to have like the empire of dinosaurs and stuff. You know? If Jurassic Park ever actually took place, I'd like to see that.
That connection between birds and
bit of conflict, you know. So that's a real generational divide, you know.
Yeah,
like our one, but it's more pronounced. That won't work on stage. I can guarantee you that.
No.
Last days of summer. You get to this time of year, and it's been a nice day, and then the next day is average. This is the time of year when British people go, "Well, that's the summer over."
Yep.
That's what they say. Something's flying around you, isn't it?
Can you see it, or is you just watching my eyes? No,
I saw it.
It's just a little bug, just a little fly or something.
Is that a more sinister bug?
It was a wasp. It flew in and flew out.
This is just going to be a commentary on various insects going past your face, isn't it?
You're going to have to resist the urge to comment on bugs flying around me.
Yeah, it's just turned into Attenborough, isn't it? Do you know what... you said recently that you didn't like horror films.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with that.
Okay.
But I do think... that the film The Fly, the Cronenberg version, because you've just seen The Fly, that is fantastic. That's one of...
I think I saw half of that. I think I saw the last half. I don't know if I can't remember the beginning. But it's really awful.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
It's really gross, yeah.
But it is fantastic, I think.
Is that classed as a horror film?
I would say probably. Well,
it's a bit scary, but is it not a bit more like mind-bending rather than... Because, like... I always imagine
a psychological horror, though. That's what they'd say, wouldn't they?
I don't know. I feel like sometimes horror films usually affect like there's that potential to leave you scared. Like that could happen to you. Whereas no one's going to go through a portal and end up mixed with a fly. Like that's not. No one's trying that right now.
No, well, Chinese government maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Area 51 or something. Who knows? But. Yeah, but it's not that's going to happen to you. It's the whole thing, like he knows that he's like doomed and stuff and changing and things. So it's kind of a metaphorical for almost like disease or mortality and stuff. It's a really great film, I think. So anyway, I tried to write a joke about it once. It didn't work. About an outtake being where he just because he's turning into a fly. There's an outtake where he's like stood by the window and is confused, doesn't know how to get out. But,
you could do a outtake where he just runs into the glass over and over again.
They should have had that in the film, shouldn't they? That should have definitely, just a bit of, it's because it's so bleak that it would have been great for a bit of light relief. But anyways.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, that's a plane.
That's a shame. That was a good line, though. I should be able to hit it.
You should be able to catch that.
Yeah, I'd be able to.
I could do another loud laugh once it leaves, and then you can splice that in.
Tell you what you should do. You should just do like a backlog of loads and laughs, and I just can edit them in. So whenever I say anything really that doesn't get
anything you want to laugh on, you just be like, I'll just put her laugh in there.
If I was better at impressions, like whenever I needed to get an extra line out of you. If I was getting an impression, I could just do it myself.
Yeah, just do it. Then you know what? Then you don't even need me. I'll just leave.
It'd just be me saying, "Oh yeah, I agree with everything you said," and you're such a good comedian as well. Which you can't tell me because you never see me do comedy, have you? So you can't really say. Which I always feel like is a. I'm not always very happy with that balance because
you always tell me I'm a really good teacher.
Yeah, but you can't reciprocate that, can you? Really?
Well, I like the things that I do see.
You're going to hold that over me, are you, for a long time? I'll never tell him.
Yeah, like one time, at some point in the future, when we're both really old, I'm going to be like, you know what, Peter, you're a pretty good comedian, aren't you? And you're going to be like, oh, she said it.
And then I'll die immediately after that, yeah. That will be what keeps me alive, just wanting to...
Just waiting for me to say it.
I need to be validated. I mean, I wouldn't, like... I pretend that I don't. You know, it's nice to know that you know, every so often.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
So I started teaching a free class, chair yoga, on Mondays at lunchtime. And I had someone come, and she was what you would expect someone who was coming to a chair yoga class, you know, like a little bit like worried about falling over and balance and stuff like that. So not wanting to go to like a proper class. And then afterwards, she made a point to send me an email and tell me how good the class was and how it made her feel and how she felt like really like positive and enthusiastic like the rest of the day. And it was like, aw, like I just felt like it was really nice. But like I wouldn't have thought twice about it if she hadn't emailed. Like it wouldn't have crossed my mind. Like I would have been like, yeah, she seemed to enjoy it. That's that. But she actually made a point to send me an email and tell me how much she liked it. It was like, oh, that's really nice. So it's like the validation is nice, but you don't necessarily need it.
Yeah, you do. If no one ever told you, you'd sort of you'd wonder whether
you'd start
what you
to
would
wonder,
do.
Wouldn't you?
You would, yeah. So, I mean, the difference with like, I mean, I gauge how well I'm doing by if people are laughing or not, or if they've clapped at the end. I suppose, whereas we don't do that for. After each pose, we don't go, oh, it's fantastic.
Oh, well done, Kayla. Well done. That's a great warrior, too.
Yeah. So you get the live feedback in the same way. But
what did you think of last night's class?
Yeah, it's all right, I think. I was very self-conscious of being the only one there.
It was all right.
Just because I thought, I must cover the whole screen of your
TV. Of my giant TV.
Yeah, I didn't like that. I shouldn't complain. I'm rarely on TV, so.
There you go. You're on my TV. But I'm glad it was all right. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, it's fine. I haven't been to a live one for a bit, so because of my busy schedule. So
I feel like I kind of got into not a rut, but a little bit of like it's quite comfortable doing like your warriors in reverse and warriors in reverse. Like when you do a sun salutation, it's lovely to do a sun salutation, but you wouldn't normally fill a whole class with just sun salutations. So I kind of felt like, am I getting into a little bit of a rut here? Do I need to mix it up a bit?
I thought that maybe you had freshened a few things up recently. Because I think you've been really on form the last couple of weeks. If that makes sense.
Oh, thank you.
No, I wondered whether that's just in contrast to maybe you sort of just going through the motions a bit a few weeks before. Not that they're bad or anything, but maybe if you've made a conscious effort to mix things up a bit.
I think like with any expression, you know, I want to say art, but you know, we say like dance is art and you know, to some extent.
So you're an artist now, are you?
No, I'm just saying, I think like with any expression, it's really easy to fall into a repetitive kind of safe zone. And it's like, yes, I know this. I know people can do it. I know how to talk, how to explain this to people, what I'm going to say. If you want to come into a new area, it requires a little bit more inspiration. Like, if you don't have any inspiration, you'll just end up sticking with what, you know, Old Faithful or whatever. It's like, yeah, I know this works. I'm going to go back to this. We're just going to do this. This is good. And everybody will most likely be happy with it. And in the end of the class, the point is that they've moved around and they've enjoyed it. But if you don't feel inspired to really stretch or reach out in a way like that for what you're teaching or what you're trying to teach, then it won't be there. And to some extent, especially if students know you well, they'll know when you're not feeling inspired and when you're feeling really inspired. That's not to say I don't like teaching. I always like teaching. I always enjoy getting up and teaching. But some days you feel more inspired to write a really new, intricate, somewhat different kind of class than you might have written a couple weeks ago or something when you were feeling a bit dreary or whatever.
Yeah, so I wasn't downplaying several weeks back.
Oh, no, I didn't.
But I would say I kind of tell us maybe a bit more. I don't know, you just felt better. I mean, it depends, because you've got to get up and do that however you feel on the day, haven't you? And I've got to do a similar thing, So sometimes you're not absolutely feeling it, but you're still doing it. And it's always good to mix that. When I've got a new bit that starts working, that's when I feel good. So, but if you're just doing the same old 20-minute set, you do go through the motions or phone it in, as they say. And some people seem to be quite happy to do that and just to deliver the same 20 minutes that they've had for 25 years. But I can't do that because I just go nuts.
And to be honest, there's a whole sect of yoga that does that. Any Ashtanga, Bikram, they're literally 27 set poses. That's it. You just do them every time, over and over and over again. Every time you go to a class, you know exactly what you're going to get.
That's your club set.
So there you go. So if you wanted to, you could do something like that. And you would be a teacher, and that was you would teach those same things over and over again. And you might add little tweaks here and there or mix it up with a twist or something like that, But for the most part, it is the same thing over and over and over again. Whereas I never teach like that, and I've never thought that was very inspired. Not that I'm saying that it doesn't have a place in the world, but, that's just not my... Like you were saying, you just get bored when you...
It's one of the things of starting doing comedy again after the pandemic. You're just like, I've got to do old stuff again. Because your new stuff you haven't done in front of people, so you can't go straight to a weekend audience and go, I've just written this stuff about the sort of nonsense I end up writing. I mean, most stuff I write is absolutely... It's just too obtuse. I'm not saying it doesn't mean I'm clever. It just means I'm trying something and it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's just
So it's about throwing weird stuff at the wall, and sometimes something will stick, and it's usually surprising, whatever it is. Usually the thing that you don't expect. But when you plan a class, do you do you do this? It's weird. It's like planning a comedy set, isn't it? Like you start the same to get everybody on board. I often start the same to get everybody on board, and then you sort of vary it a little bit depending on what the crowd are like. It is the same sort of...
It's very similar if you put it like that,
similar. Yeah. But the only thing is that what I do is that obviously if I've got 20 minutes and there's a lot of laughter, I don't have to do so many jokes. But I think you probably still have to... I mean, do you ever do like a yoga set and find that you're running over and then you can drop a bit, or...
Yeah, all the time.
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, yeah, all my class plans. I plan stuff and I think, oh my God, that's half an hour. What am I going to do? Right. Sprucing up a bit. Improv. Because I didn't plan enough here. Or the other way around, where you plan too much and then you think, right, I'm going to have to drop all that because that's not going to fit in. And then you just, I don't know how it happens, but I think it has to do with how much I need to explain. So it varies. So some days if it's people that like you really quite proficient, you know what you're doing, I don't explain very much, I can get through.
So that's the nicest thing you've ever said about me then. So.
I can get through a lot more poses because I don't have to explain them as much. Or if I stand up and someone is actually doing it wrong, I will take the time to explain it.
I suppose if someone does something wrong, it does interrupt, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's like getting a heckler in some ways. You need to tell someone to shut up, just
Yeah, there you go. But another thing as well is sometimes if I can tell that people are tired or hot, I might stop early and have a longer shavasana or something, a longer rest.
So you're reading the room. That's what we call it.
See? Yeah. There you go. The other day, I had one of the nicest, kind of improv sessions, if you want to call it that, because I've been teaching this corporate class now online for over a year. Someone mentioned the other day that they wouldn't mind trying Wild Thing because it'd been a while since they'd done it. And I was like, yeah. And then I kind of said, well, the reason why I don't do Wild Thing is because I'm against a wall, because the wall is in the way. So, she was saying about wanting to do Wild Thing, and I was saying, and I mentioned about, I tend to plan that in because of needing to really think about directional things in the wall behind me and stuff. But I thought, you know what? Yeah, let's go for it. Let's plan it in. And then while I did the class, I thought, right, what does Wild Thing do?
Makes your heart sing. That's what...
Yeah, there you go.
So I was waiting to say that. I was just saying.
And then...
That is the lyric, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
And then I thought, right, okay, how would I want to warm up for that pose? So then the whole 45-minute class was basically wrapped around warming up and stretching and strengthening with the intention of taking this wild thing. And then the wild thing being like the height of the class or the main point. And then the rest, like the last few, 5-10 minutes of class was around cooling down and releasing the muscles that might have been used during something like that, during all that warm up. So it's actually like really... Like, I found that really good inspiration. Like, that was really fun to try to do on the spot. So I felt like, it doesn't have to be, like, mystical inspiration. Like, I quite like it when people just ask me for things. And then it's like, oh, yeah, okay, let's go for that.
Wild thing doesn't sound very, it sounds like a new word for, it has got a Sanskrit name, isn't it?
No, wild thing is made up. Yeah, it's not.
Okay, so it's like
is
it like a tikka masala or something then? Like it's actually a British dish.
It probably has a name that someone has made up for it by now, but I'm pretty sure that it is a very recent addition to like the pose library, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
Like the Book of Mormon or something. Okay. Anyway, do you want to talk about the actual things that you said, the actual topic things?
Yeah. So did we say we might talk about...
talking for ages, which I'm sorry, I'm almost...
I don't mind.
Apologising for that, but do you want to say some stuff about knees?
Because my focus classes have been recently focusing on the body. Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
I think the knees are a funny one in terms of how joints are in general, because... Like every time we do our cat-cows, I pretty much always say something along the lines of, how good it is for joints to be moved. So especially in the spine, we don't move the spine very much. It's quite easy in a normal modern day to go through the whole day and hardly move your spine at all. Like forward and backward and left and right. We tend not to have to lean. We don't tend to reach. We don't always round or do back bends, especially back bends. I mean, how often do we do a back bend when we're just sat around or walking around? You're not going to stop under a tree and go, back bend, when you're on your walk. I mean, you can do, that'd be great. But I don't know, it's just like, so I tend to emphasize that it's really good for joints to be moved. But I kind of feel like the one exception is probably the knees, because we move them so much and they also take our weight, which is fine. They've got lots of tendons around the knees, which help distribute the weight. But I feel like when we go to a yoga class that's focused around knees, I feel like it's more like, how can I be more gentle with my knees? Rather than like, oh, I'm going to, exercise my knees. Like they don't need that. They get that just walking into the building. They're fine. And then there's a lot more emphasis on like making sure that there's your knee safety in your practice as well. So something that I see a lot, which is very common and not necessarily a bad thing, it just happens, is a little bit of an imbalance when you come into your warrior postures or your crescent high lunge or any of those postures where your front leg is quite far forward, your back leg's really back there, and that front knee is supposed to be over the ankle, and then it's just not. It's dropped in or something like that. And then that puts a lot of pressure because you have two kind of like bony bits that come from the top of the leg that meet the bottom of the leg, and then the kneecap kind of sits on top. And then obviously there's lots of things in between to make it a joint. But those two bony bits, they want to take the weight evenly. You don't want to press into one side of that bone. You want to press evenly so that the weight is going straight down through both parts of the knee, down through to the ankle. So keeping the knee right over the ankle is a really good way to make sure that happens. So you're not slowly wearing out one side of the knee or something. And then there's the fact that we always think of our knee as a hinge joint, which technically I think it is considered a hinge joint, but it's not really, not properly. It's not like a door, because when we bend our knee, it can move left and right. What's that dance where you put your hands on your knees and they swap them from side to side and the knees go out and about?
Oh, I don't know.
Is that like the bee's knees?
Lily hopping or something?
Lily hopping.
Oh, no, it's not lily.
I almost wanted to say the Charleston, but I think that's different. I think you're kicking your legs back in the Charleston.
What's the mashed potato?
Mashed potato? I have no idea.
Oh, I haven't made
Why
that
do these
up.
dances have ridiculous names?
I was going to come up with them in the 30s or something.
When all we had was mashed potatoes.
I suppose enough to YouTube it or something. People doing the mashed potato, but I just sort of think, is that like
whatever
looking
that
like you're mashing potato or something? I don't know.
Well, that dance where you put your hands on your knees and then you swap them back and forth and the knees go out and left and right. Well, that dance. That's only possible because when you bend the knees can go left and right. So they're not just a hinge joint. You can't, if you open the door, you can't all of a sudden move it up. It's not, that's a hinge joint. But the knees have a little bit more freedom than that, which is good. That means we can sit cross-legged. You wouldn't be able to sit cross-legged if the knee didn't bend at all in that way. But it also means like when the knee is bent, it's more prone to injury. So it just means that like when you go to take a balance pose, a lot of teachers teach that to safely take the pose, you need to bend the knee. Bend your standing knee. And they always say things like, oh, I know it doesn't look good. It won't look good on Instagram if your knee is bent. And it's like, well, even if you really didn't care about that, I would say choose. As long as you've made it a choice, it's fine. Your knee can be bent. You'll feel all the muscles in the leg engage, especially the ones around the knee. And that can be protective because you're strengthening those muscles and you're really getting something out of it. But if you feel super wobbly and you think you might actually really kind of fall out of the pose, as in need to put your other leg down and you're wobbling and you're going everywhere, then maybe lock the leg straight because it's less likely you'll twist the knee coming out of the pose unexpectedly. As long as you're happy with what you're doing and you've made it a choice, then it's probably okay. And then you can make that choice every time you go to the yoga mat. You know, even in a fast class when you're doing your flows and stuff, you can decide what your knee's like and using padding under the knees so you don't get little bruised kneecaps and stuff, which I'm afraid I just did on Monday because I thought, no, this floor isn't hard. Yeah. And now I've got little red knees because the floor was hard.
So the bits around, obviously the knees don't have muscles, do they? Like the knee, so hang on.
Try again.
The muscles around the knee, right? Is that right? And so if those are strengthened, you're less likely to damage your knees, is that? Did you say that? Or did I misinterpret that?
There's potential. I would say that,
like how do you stop your knees? Because when I was running for a bit, sometimes my knee wouldn't feel quite, I wasn't confident on one of my knees when I was running. And I hear that if you run, sometimes it's quite bad for your knees. Yeah. So people put those things on their knees, don't they? The strapping and stuff.
Yeah.
Or those like, you've seen them, not like strapping, but like a actual, like some sort of.
It's got a little hole for the kneecap.
Like you've put a big, like a sock. You've put your sock on, but you've accidentally ripped.
But you brought it all the way up.
Yeah. So could you do like why? I don't know. So do you know why you get problems with your knees if you like run sometimes, and if doing some sort of knee exercisey yoga type things would help complement you so that you don't have problems with your knees?
Yeah, so I would say that yoga can definitely help with knee problems, and at the very least it can just make you very self-aware of the problems that you may have and how you can not make that worse. So like if you like to sit with your feet, like if you like to sit on your feet or cross your legs a lot, that has the potential to make any issues with your knees worse. And as you become more and more aware, maybe you'll stop doing that kind of little habit or something like that. In terms of like wearing the knee sock, I don't know what it's called. In terms of wearing that, I would say like to some extent, yes. If the muscles near the knees and around the knees, and they tend to separate them out, but very tight groups of muscles, but like there's a little teardrop shaped muscle on the inside of the leg near the knee. That one needs to be strong to help the knee, but as with anything, you can overdo it. You can over strengthen the knees and that could make them stiff. And then on top of that as well, there are certain movements where the knees aren't necessarily going to be the right muscles aren't necessarily going to be fully engaged. So I think sometimes with sports, they tend to wear things like the knee sock to help support, so the muscles stay supported even when those muscles might not necessarily be switched on or helping. Now that might not be the case for running.
Well, I was just thinking with running, because if your leg is in the air and then you land on it, is that the thing? Is it the impact that causes the problem?
So I wouldn't say that impact really causes much problem with muscles unless I'm missing something quite serious. Obviously, pain in your knee caused by running is going to be joint related. So the meniscus and the bursa and the actual parts of the joint that make up, the joint connecting with the two bones connecting, they need to have padding in between. And the more you bang that, when you're running, the more likely that padding is going to wear down faster. And if you're not hydrated, if you've not drunk enough, if you've not stretched or warmed up the muscles so that they're ready to support you, that can all make it worse, so that the effect on the knee doesn't, your body doesn't bounce back as well. And they say, like, if you're supposed to be able to press on your arm, and then if you're hydrated, that pressure will go away and the color will go away quite quickly. But if it lasts for ages, then it's like, oh, you should be drinking more water because that should have gone. It's kind of like that.
Where am I pressing?
I don't know, just anywhere.
Anywhere on my arm?
Yeah, you're just supposed to press, and it goes white, and then you count to like 10, and it should be gone by then, because you should be hydrated enough that it will have pumped it away.
Oh, I pumped it away really quickly there.
Well, there you go. I don't know if that's a scientific thing. That's just something we used to do when I was younger. But I just think like it's the principle, the idea that if you're quite healthy already, then your body will recover quickly from something. So that includes small things like banging the joints when you're running. But I think a lot of the time, a lot of people's imbalances can be due to muscle. So like making sure the muscle isn't too tight, isn't tighter on the outside than the inside, and vice versa, of the leg, or of the knee. But if you like running, I think a lot of the time the problems occur with the actual joint itself, because we just use the knee so much. It's not the kind of thing that you can just stop using for a few hours, unless you want to become a couch potato for a few hours or something, and that's fine. Yeah. I'm all up for that, but practically wise, you normally have gotten up at least to go to the lift, and if not, you probably need more hydration.
I don't really like my knees very much. Though.
You don't like your knees? What, the look of them?
No, because I don't.
They hurt.
I don't like wearing shorts outside because people might see my. To be honest, I don't look at people's knees very often. But
I was going to say, is this a thing? Do people judge people based on knee shape?
Well, I don't know, because like when you're a kid and you I don't know, in the Beano or something, they have like knobbly knee competitions and stuff like that. So you just. I was growing up thinking that there's a lot of stigma attached to having knobbly knees, but no one has ever said it to me.
Is that not just because knobbly knee just both sound so they're an alliteration, so people just use it because it's an alliteration and it's fun to say, knobbly knees?
Maybe, but I don't know, I felt like I was maybe my knees are not knobblier than other people's knees, but do they feel like they're knobbly? I mean,
yeah.
Knees they have a knobble on them anyway, aren't they? By the very nature of the fact that they've got the kneecap is like a knobble, isn't it? So how knobbly have your knees got to be for it to become something that people go, fuck me, look at that guy's knees. Yeah.
Look at his knobbly knees.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know.
Dear. I don't know. I don't think I've ever thought about people's knobbly knees.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's a British thing, because I'm sure they used to have like knobbly knee contests by the seaside or something like that. Like
that is so weird.
In like before we could travel abroad or something, that'd be our like before Miss World.
We had before Miss World, we had
the
knobbly
knee competition. Yeah, so.
Oh man, I don't know. I'm not really bothered about that kind of thing. It's not really bothered me. I've never really thought about it, but I am conscious that my kneecaps are quite small.
You mean the opposite of knobbly?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not sure if knobbly is the right word, but my kneecap itself, like it's like maybe an inch from top to bottom.
All right.
The actual kneecap itself.
So you think that's too small?
I don't know. I just feel like it's a bit small. And when I straighten my leg out, flat, and I relax my leg, my kneecap goes all over the place. And I don't know anyone else who's got a kneecap that moves around as much as mine. It can go everywhere. I'm not embarrassed by my knees. I'm not bothered by them. But I do think, I do sometimes wonder if my knees aren't quite normal. Because it's not something you tend to compare with very often. And I do think, I have problems with my knees, my kneecap sliding around, which is why I mention it in my yoga classes so much. Use a blanket, use cushioning, keep your toes curled on the back leg, even when the knee is down, because you want to keep the muscles engaged so the kneecap doesn't slide around, because that's just another way of ripping and tearing things.
That's interesting, because
slides, definitely.
That's one thing that on our YouTube with your rival tutor.
Not
Adrian.
a rival. Yeah.
You're a rival, like I'm a rival to like a successful comedian, I suppose. Like I'm a rival to Jimmy Carr or something. Like, I think he's my rival, but he's just like, who's that?
Who? Who?
Yeah, but she's always like doing these, you know, like you do what do you call
like
it?
A low lunge, but
like
you put
a low
your
lunge, but your knees
down
on the floor, and you don't have your. I mean, if you don't have your toes underneath it, I don't like it. I feel like it's really uncomfortable. That. Yeah.
I don't think that's very safe for the knee. I think that really healthy people do that because they don't realise that knees can be quite picky.
Well, she will be one of them.
I say over and over and over, if when you step back, unless you absolutely cannot, leave your knee off the mat. Leave it up. Don't put it down. I know it's hard. I know it's hard work, but do it because that is better for your knee than trying to put it down and be all like, all over the knee. You can even leave it bent. You don't have to straighten the leg, but just keeping it off the floor is just a little bit nicer for the knee.
So is that all the knee stuff?
I do think that kind of covers everything to do with knees.
Oh, good. Well, that's knees then. Let's never discuss knees again. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, hope that was all right. As ever, if you enjoy the show, we're very grateful for you telling other people about it, or you can whack us a nice review on iTunes or something like that if you want. And we're on social media as well. If you check the show notes, you find the links to all of our sort of social media platform, like where we are on that. And we'll see you in 2 weeks, where I forget what we're talking about, but it's definitely something. There'll definitely be an episode. Oh God, I should have done some research here. There's something about wasps. See you then, maybe. Hope so.